Hello and welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark, and thank you so much for coming by to hang out a little while we look into God's Word. We are in lesson 55 of a walk through the Bible. We are studying the last 4 prophets in this series. And again, we're just touching on them. We're not doing a deep dive. It's just an overview to see the kinds of things that were going on during the times of the kings, and as we're going to look at today, during the time after they are in exile and come back and return to Jerusalem as well. Now, we're going to be looking at Zecheriah, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Malachi, lesson 55. So Zechariah's audience were the Israelites who had returned to Jerusalem after captivity. His prophecies include the call back to God, as well as many messianic prophecies. So it's important to see all these things. Jesus is being prophesied even during this time. And I've mentioned this earlier, probably several lessons ago. This is when we really do find the cultural idea of what a Messiah was going to look like. To the Jewish culture, when Jesus comes around, they thought God was going to send a great king. So that's what they're looking for. Well, you know what? He did send a great king. It just wasn't what they were imagining. So what are the questions here? How does God feel about Jerusalem? And what promises does God make for Israel are the questions as we read this. Zechariah 1:12 through 17. And the angel of Jehovah answered and said, O Jehovah of hosts, until when will you not have pity on Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, against which you have abhorred these 70 years? And Jehovah answered the angel who was talking with me with good words, words of comfort. So the angel who was talking with me said to me, Cry out, saying, So says Jehovah of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy. And with great anger I am angered at the nations at ease, in that I was but a little angry, and they gave help for evil. So Jehovah says this, I have returned to Jerusalem with compassions. My house shall be built in it, says Jehovah of hosts, and a line shall be stretched over Jerusalem. Cry out again, saying, So says Jehovah of hosts, my cities shall again overflow with goodness. So here's some promises, right? And Jehovah shall yet comfort Zion, and shall yet choose Jerusalem. So here's kind of that transitional phase of when they're, the exiles want to come and rebuild Jerusalem. So how does God feel about Jerusalem? Well, he's very jealous for Jerusalem. And, we think of human jealousy. That's not the same thing. This is just God who has a great yearning to bring back his people to that place where they are worshiping him. It's all part of his plan, right? It's all going to be this whole idea of leading up to the Christ, and then him bringing in what he does, and then the Holy Spirit doing what he does. So this is all very important to the story. Israel has been in exile, and they're ready to return. God is jealous. He is angry, though, that the surrounding nations, see, God uses the surrounding nations to judge Israel. But he's unhappy that they actually want to exterminate the Jews. God's not happy about that. He's like, no, I just use you for judgment. I didn't use you to exterminate them. That's not what he wanted. So God promises a return to prosperity, and we talked about God talking to them when they'd been in there for a while and they needed to take care of the temple. So what about Ezra? Well, Ezra is an interesting story, and he was part of the exiles who returned to Judah under Cyrus. And what's interesting in Ezra, the people who return, the exiles, their names are listed, and that's important. Okay, again, we're talking about culture building, the culture for when Jesus comes, right? The culture of the Jews whose names are listed, right? They're still Jews. And then how do they look at Samaritan Jews who have intermarried? They're not on the list so much. And so there's these all kinds of different cultural differences going on as well. So he rebuilds the temple, right? Which is a big deal. Rebuilding the temple is a gigantic big deal. I think, if anything, we see the providence of God in this. As always, God is getting his way. And God will get his way. And there's nothing to stop God. People think they can, but they don't. Okay, so we get to chapter 10, and these people are putting away their wives. So let's look at why. While Ezra was praying and making his confession, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, a very great congregation of men and women and children gathered to him out of Israel, for the people wept with a great weeping. This is a very horrible, terrible moment in my mind as I see this. While they were, Ezra was really good. He hears that many people are married to foreign wives, and this was something that God said he forbade them to do it. There were 7 specific nationalities, people in the region. He says, do not marry those people. And it wasn't because, they are intrinsically evil. It's because they worshipped idols, and God says, don't marry them because you're going to become a part of their idolatry. And that's exactly what happens every single time. But they come and they actually tell Ezra, look, there's some people that have married these foreign wives, and this is what happens. Verse 2. And Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel, of the sons of Elam, answered and said to Ezra, we have sinned against our God, and we have dwelt with foreign women from the peoples of the land, yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. And now let us cut a covenant with our God, to cause to go out all the women and those born of them according to the counsel of the Lord, and of those who tremble at the command of our God. And let it be done according to the law. Rise up, for the matter is on you. We also will be with you. Be strong and act. Then Ezra rose up and made the chief priests, the Levites, and all Israel to swear that they would do according to this word. And they swore. Then Ezra rose up from before the house of God and went to the room of Jehonan, the son of Elishib. And they went there, and he did not eat food, nor did he drink, for he mourned for the perfidy of the exiles. And they passed a call throughout Judah and Jerusalem to all the sons of the exiles to assemble at Jerusalem, and that whoever would not come within 3 days, according to the counsel of the leaders and the elders, all his property would be forfeited, and he would be excluded from the congregation of the exiles. Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin gathered to Jerusalem within 3 days. And it was the 9th month, on the 20th of the month, and all the people sat in the plaza of the house of God, trembling because of the matter and because of the heavy rain. So you can see this dismal day. It's raining. These people they realize that they have wives they're not supposed to have. And Ezra the priest stood up and said to them, you have trespassed and have dwelt with foreign women to increase the guilt of Israel. And now make confession to Jehovah God of your fathers, and do this, and do his will, and separate yourselves from the peoples and the land from the foreign women. Then all the congregation answered and said with a loud voice, right, according to your word, it is on us to do. But the people are many, and it is a time of heavy rain. and are not able to stand outside. And the work is not of 1 or 2 days, for we have greatly sinned this thing. Please let our rulers for all the congregation stand, and let all those who have dwelt with foreign women in our cities come and set a time, and with them the elders of every city and its judges, until the fierce wrath of our God for this matter has turned from us. Only Jonathan the son of Asahel and Jahaziah the son of Tikva made a stand against this, and Meshullam and Shabbatai the Levite supported them. So the only reason I bring this up is because we see in this return to Jerusalem this kind of dedication to God. And this is a terrible thing that happens. And there's more to the story, of course, where they actually cut ties with their wives and their children that they've had, so that they can be right according to the law. So this is a dedication that we see, and it's very grave. It's a very grave happening, and the people are obviously not happy about it. And one of the things we have to realize is when these women return to their homes, they may or may not find husbands for themselves. Now, if they return home with children, that would be a great blessing for whoever's home they return to. It's not a burden. In fact, when you get children work. In the old days, children were workers. They would help, in whatever fashion around the home. And of course, the moms, they would help too. So what is it? Was it completely disastrous? Yes, in the sense that it was an emotional moment for everybody that are parting ways. But in some ways, it was a benefit for the homes that they went to, because they brought children and that sort of thing. It's a really horrible story as far as, I'm sure the emotions were very, very high in that sort of instance. But this is the dedication that we see, the exiles who come back, they're rededicating themselves. Now, I only bring this up because as much as they dedicate themselves and do the right things, they also do the wrong things. And this is just indicative of who we are as human beings. Okay, so Nehemiah. Nehemiah's role in rebuilding of Jerusalem was to make sure that the walls were built. In chapter 4, verses 1 through 20, why would Israel's enemies be angry about the building of Jerusalem's wall? And describe how dedicated these workers were. Okay, let's get right into it. It happened that when Sanballat heard that we built the wall, he was angry. Sanballat, let me give you a little backup. Let me back up here. Sanballat and Tobiah are a couple of guys who don't like the idea. They're mocking the Jews when they come back to build the walls of Jerusalem. They're going, oh yeah, a fox will jump on it and break it down. And they're laughing and mocking them. They don't want it to happen. Now Nehemiah was a cupbearer for Artaxerxes, the Persian king. And he hears a report of Jerusalem's dismal condition. And he asks to go. And the king says, yeah, how long is it going to be? When are you going to come back? Okay, go. So he's sent there as a governor. And this is all, again, God is showing favor to his people within the king's, courts. Again, just like Daniel, just like Joseph, It's just really interesting to see these stories like this. Like Moses even. So he, again, in this book, we see the lists of the exiles. And again, it's very important to see that to understand the culture later. These were who? Judah and Benjamin, right? Judah and Benjamin. And that's what's left in their minds of pure Jews, right? Not these Samaritan Jews. That's what we'll see later. I just want to bring that up because it becomes a thing later. he makes these reforms, and he reads the law, and the nation as a whole is repentant. And he sets up this government, and he sets up all the order. And we're going to see that Israel's enemies do fear Israel when they come to do this. And we're going to see just how dedicated they are. So let's look at this. Sanballat heard that we built the wall. He was angry. It greatly enraged him, and he mocked the Jews, and he spoke before his brothers, the army of Samaria, and said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end into the day? Will they bring to life the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned?" Now remember, Babylon came and destroyed the place. Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, "Even that which they build, if a fox goes up, he will even break it down. He will break down their stone wall. Our God, oh our God, hear, for we are despised, and turn their curse on their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. And do not cover their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders." So we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together to the half of it, and the people had a heart to work. And it happened when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabians and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that repairing of the walls in Jerusalem had gone up, that the breaks were being closed up. It was very angering to them, and all of them conspired together to come up and fight against Jerusalem and do harm to it. But we made a prayer to God. So this is important. We always see God responds to these prayers. Set a watch out against them day and night. So here's the vigilance that we see, the faith that they have in God because of them. And Judah said, "The strength and the burden carriers is weakening, and there is so much rubbish, so that we are not able to build the wall. And our foes have said, they shall not know or see until we come in the middle of them and kill them, and cause the work to cease." And it happened when the Jews who lived near them came in, they said to us 10 times, "From all the places where you shall return, they will be against us." So I stationed. So here's the answer. So I stationed from the lowest parts of the place, from the back of the wall, in the higher places even, I stationed people according to their families, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I saw, and I rose up, and I said to the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, "Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord." Okay? We talk so much about being God-focused when it comes to building our faith. Remember the Lord, who is great and terrible, and will fight for your brothers and your sons and your daughters and your wives and your houses. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us, and that our God had broken their counsel. All of us returned to the wall, each one to his work. And it happened from that time on, half of my servants worked in the work, and the other half of them were holding spears. Imagine, I used to work in construction. I can imagine. You're holding a rotor hammer or your drill motor or something, and there's another guy standing to you with a gun to protect you. This is what's going on. They're working, one guy with a shovel or pickaxe and another guy with a spear to protect them. And it happened from that time on. Half of my servants worked on the work, the other of them holding the spears, the shields and the bows and the scale armor, and the rulers were behind all the house of Judah. And the ones who built on the wall, and the ones who carried a burden, bearing one with of his hands a worker the work, and one holding a weapon, for each man of the builders had his sword tied by his side. So you're working and you have a tool and you have your sword. And built. And he who sounded the ram's horn was beside me. And I said to the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, and the work was great and large, and we are separated on the wall, far from one another. In whatever place you hear the sound of the ram's horn, gather there to us. Our God will fight for us. That is an amazing story. So these guys were so dedicated. And this is what it needed. This is what needed to happen. God, again, needed people to rededicate themselves to looking to Him and trusting Him. They prayed to God. then they did what they had to do. They didn't expect God to make a miracle. They said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to arm ourselves. And that's what they did. Okay, Malachi. Now this is the last of the prophets in the book of the Bible. Deals with some of the sins of Israel had fallen into after the restoration of Jerusalem. And when you go to chapter 2, verses 10 through 17, I say identify the three problems Israel faces, and of course it might be more, and we'll take a look at that. Looking at Malachi chapter 2, verses 10 through 17. Now, the other things Malachi is really dealing with are profane offerings. Okay, so if the temple's built, but you're being profane in your worship, that is not acceptable to God. And that's true today too. People want to say, oh, it doesn't matter. We don't know how, God didn't give us a law. It's like, no, if you're going to be profane about your worship, you'll know. You'll know. Look at your scriptures. The priests are called out for rationalizing and feigning ignorance. They're pretending like they don't know. The Levites were brought in because they're supposed to know these things. They're supposed to be looking at the law. But they're pretending like, oh, we were not supposed to do that? And Malachi's not happy. Okay, three problems here. Is there not one Father to us all? Has not one God created us? Why do we act deceitfully, each man with his brother, to profane the covenant of our fathers? Judah has dealt treacherously and has done an abomination in Israel and in Jerusalem, for Judah has profaned the holy place of Jehovah, which he loves, and has married a daughter of a foreign god. So, usually that kind of language means we're looking and talking about idolatry. Jehovah will cut off from the tents of Jacob the man who does it. He waking and answering or offering a grain offering to Jehovah of hosts. And this is a second thing you have done, covering the altar of Jehovah with tears, with weeping and groaning, yet not facing toward the grain offering, and taking it with delight from your hand. So they have the wrong attitude. Yet you say, on what cause? Because Jehovah has been witness between you and me, the wife of your youth, against whom you dealt treacherously, and she is your companion and your covenant wife. Now we're looking at treachery towards wives. And has he not made you one? Yet the vestige of the Spirit is in him. And what of the one? He was seeking a seed of God. Then guard your spirit, and do not deal treacherously with the wife of your youth. And likely this was probably overt divorce or something. Jehovah, the God of Israel, says he hates sending away or divorce, and to cover with violence on his garment, says Jehovah of hosts. Then guard your spirit and do not act treacherously. So for the most part, when there were issues within marriages, a lot of times a woman didn't have a lot of power within a marriage, and divorces were typically instituted by men against their wives. It wasn't always just them, but usually that was it. You have wearied Jehovah with your words. You say, and what have we wearied him? When you say every evildoer is good in the eyes of Jehovah, and he delights in them? Or where is the God of justice? So God is complaining, his complaint against them is that they're not looking to rightfully judge. There are all of these issues with marriages. Their sacrifices are profane. God actually is very clear when he says, when you get together and you have this common meal, you will not come empty-handed and you will rejoice. And they weren't doing those things. And so this is, again, just for me, when I see it, it just shows that how easy it is for us to just slip up. And if we don't keep our eye on things, if we don't keep our eye on God, we can slip away very easily. So here are those priests using human reasoning to God. That never works, and that happens a lot even today. People trying to reason against God using our feeble little logic minds of humanism. Ridiculous. God is God, and it's best to just listen to God and not argue. Okay, that's it for this week. For this lesson, I should say. Now, there's a couple of there's one pickup lesson I want to get ready that will finish out the Old Testament, and then we will be getting into the New Testament. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'll see you in the